Hello guys, this is Paul McWhorter with TopTechBoy.com coming to you this morning from the shores of a very foggy River Nile in order to bring you episode number 16 in our incredible new tutorial series where you're learning how to make Arduino and Python work together. What I'm going to need you to do is pour yourself a nice glass of ice cold coffee. That would be straight up black coffee poured over ice. No sugar, no sweeteners, none needed. And as you're pouring your coffee, as always, I want to give a shout out to you guys who are helping me out over at Patreon. It is your support and your encouragement that keeps this great content coming. You guys that are not helping out yet, take a look down in the description. There is a link over to my Patreon account. Think about hopping on over there and hooking a brother up. But enough of this shameless self-promotion. Let's talk about what I am going to teach you today. And what we're going to look at is we're going to look at connecting a joystick up to the Arduino. Now, if you remember the last few lessons, we've been working a little bit more on the Python side, and we created, using a good parameterized model, a 3D model of a room, and that room had a marble in it, and the marble was bouncing off all the directions, X, Y, and Z. It was just randomly bouncing around the room. Now, that was done on the Python side. Now, today, I'm going to show you how to hook up a joystick to the Arduino. Then you can imagine soon we're going to be passing the data from the Arduino, the joystick data, over to Python. Where is this going? Can you guys see where this is going? Leave a comment down below if you can kind of picture where we are going with these lessons. But today what we're going to do is we're going to get the joystick working, and then I will have you as a homework assignment pass that data over to the Python, the VPython simulation, and then do something kind of interesting with it. Okay, well, enough of this introductory banter. Let's jump in, and I must start by just apologizing. If you hear a little hum in the background, it is the lawn being mowed outside, and I hope it isn't too distracting, but if you're getting a little buzz, it's the lawnmower. When you live on the equator, if you don't mow every day, the jungle returns. And so you're always kind of fighting back the jungle. And so we do experience at times a little background lawnmower noise, but we are going to power on. So what I will do is I will get out of your way, and then we will come over here and we will look at the gear that we will be using today. We're using the Arduino Uno R3. I'm using the red board. You guys are probably using your Elegoo one. This is a joystick that comes out of the Elegoo Super Starter Kit, linked down in the description below. If you don't have this particular joystick, all the joysticks work pretty much the same, so whichever one you have should probably work. And then I'm using these this little ribbon cables, which also I got out of the Elegoo kit. Now you'll notice that the connectors on the joystick are male, and this is the case for most joysticks. They're male, so you need the female end on the wires, and then the other end needs to be male. Now, if for some reason you don't have one of the, if for some reason you don't have this female to male ribbon, what you can do in a pinch, you can just plug the joystick in. You can just plug the joystick into the board, and then you can bring the jumpers off the male to male, and then you're kind of a little bit awkward using it like this, but that will actually work. Okay, let's hop over and let's talk a little bit about this joystick and how it works. And so the first thing to understand is we lose our sketch pad and have to come back. What happened was it was just a few seconds since I'd started it, and so it kind of timed out and went to the shutdown mode. But we have recovered now. We have recovered. And let me do one other tiny bit of Windows management here to get this camera absolutely in peak performance. Okay, there. That should all be good now. Okay, we're back over here. Now, so if we look at this joystick, we need to kind of see what the connections are. And you can see that there are five pins coming off of it. And when the pins are pointed up in the air, on the left we have MS, which is the master switch, and then the next pin is the Y potentiometer, and then the next pin is the X potentiometer, and then we have 5 volts, and then we have ground. Okay, like that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hook the MS, the master switch, to digital pin 2. I'm going to hook the Y potentiometer to analog pin 1. I'm going to hook the X to analog pin 0. Of course, the 5 goes to 5 and the ground goes to ground. All right, so hopefully that makes sense, and then we will jump in and start coding. Okay, and so let me see, I'll switch back over here and just kind of start wiring this thing up. You can see that I'm holding it with the pins in the air, like how I had it when I was showing you the connections. And so I'm going to go the brown wire, and it doesn't really matter the color, but I'll say on the left I am going to go brown wire to master switch, and then I am going to go yellow to Y. My yellow is to Y. Okay, and then my green is to X. My green is to X, and then I have my red to the 5 volts. Okay, and then I have my orange to the ground. Now you guys can use whatever colors you want, but you see this ribbon cable just makes it kind of convenient. Now the brown, which was the first one on the left, my first one on the left we said was going to go to digital pin 2. So I will plug that into digital pin 2. And then the red wire we had going to 5 volts. And so let me go in order. The next one was yellow. And so yellow was Y, and Y was going to be a 1. Okay. And then the next one, green, was the X, and that's going to go to a 0. A 0 over here. Now I've got the red that is going to go to 5 volts, and I got to kind of tip it to see it here with my real eyes as opposed to looking at it on the camera. And then the last one all the way over to the right is ground, and ground is right next to 5 volts. So we will put that there, and I lost these two, so let me come back. The yellow is Y, and that is a 0. And then my green was a 1, and we are like that. And I think we are hooked up there. Let me put this over here again where you can see it. So I think we have our circuit hooked up at this point. And again, just a quick look at how we wired the thing up. And so you need to do something similar. If yours are in a different order, just do it where your X goes to A0, your Y goes to A1, and then your master switch goes to digital 2. And then we should be okay at that point. All right, we are going to move the sketch pad out of the way. I'm going to get my keypad back, and now I will need you guys to fire up an Arduino IDE. So I will come over here and open up the Arduino IDE, and boom, we've got a fresh new Arduino IDE program just ready to be written. Okay, let me just pause a little bit and say just a little bit about what this joystick is. The joystick is really 2 potentiometers. It's really 2 potentiometers. An X potentiometer that goes like this when you move the stick left and right, and then a Y potentiometer that goes like this as you're moving it in the Y direction. And when you read from a potentiometer, you're going to be reading a number from 0 to 1023, and that's the X potentiometer should go from 0 to 1023, and then the Y potentiometer is going to go from 0 to it's going to go from 0, I think, is back to 1023. And so we're going to be getting readings from the X potentiometer from 0 to 1023, the Y potentiometer from 0 to 1023, and then if you press the Z down, if you press the button down, we're going to get a digital value between 0 and, or a digital value of 0 or 1. And so that is kind of like the click button is going to give me a 0 or a 1. So I can get 2 analog values and 1 digital digital value, and hopefully that makes sense. So let's go in now and let's see if we can code this thing up. It should be pretty easy. First of all, I need to set up my pins, and so I'm going to have a pot, the X potentiometer, and that was hooked to pin A0. Okay, and then I have an int, I have a pot Y, and that we hook to the A1 analog pin. And now we have an int, and it was the potentiometer Z, the Z pin, and we hook the Z pin to digital pin 2, which will just be a 2. Okay, now we have our pins set up. Now we need to give a variable that we will be reading those values into. So I'm just going to call it xval for the value that I'm reading off the X potentiometer. And I'm going to just go ahead and give it a value of 0. When I declare my variables, I like to put a number in there just in case somewhere down in the program you're looking for an initial value before you've actually done your read. And we're not going to do that here, but to me, it just helps me. I always, just as a matter of good habit, always put a value in when I declare my variable. So xval, then I'm going to have a yval for the value that I read from the Y potentiometer, and then I'm going to have a zval for the value that I read from my Z switch. And then, as you can see, we need to come in and make sure that we put the ints in. Little oversight. It does not count as a mistake if you correct it before you actually run the program. Pro tip, remember that. Okay, I think we have our variable set up. Now we are eventually going to be passing this data over to Python, and so we need to start our serial port. So I will say serial.begin, and I like to run at 115/200 baud rate just because I can. Now we need to set up, and I'm going to just put some white space here so I can keep the code a little closer to the top. We need to set up our pins. Well, what you know is pin mode. You know that the pot in the X, and I got to remind myself that, yeah, pot in the X potentiometer is going to be an input, okay, and also pin mode, the pot Y, the Y potentiometer, is also likewise going to be an input. And now the pin mode pot Z is also going to be an input. All right, but now what you got to see is if I'm reading from that digital pin, it's going to read whether the switch is on or off. I need to power that pin up, and then the resistors and the switch and everything, you know, you'll correctly read from it. And so I need to go ahead and power that up, and so I need to do a digital right. It also sets up a pull-up resistor that then makes everything work right when you do this. But bottom line is you need to go to pot Z, and you need to move it high like that, and then that switch should work. I do believe that when the switch is just sitting there in the open position, it should read a 1, and then when you press it down, it should close the switch, and then it should see ground. It should be 1 in the up position. Press the button, it should read 0. Okay, maybe someday I can do a lesson on that. Pull up and pull down resistors and so forth. Okay, but we have all that set up. Now we need to come in and we need to start doing our reads. And so the first thing is I'm going to read the xval, and I'm going to do the xval is going to be an analog read. And that analog read, where are we going to read from? We are going to read from potentiometer X like that. Okay, and now yval, we are going to analog read from pot Y, and then we are going to zval, and that is going to be a digital read because this is a digital pin, and this would be pot Z like that. Hopefully that all makes sense. All right, now let's go ahead and see if we can, and remember we're thinking about, we're going to eventually be passing this over to Python, so we need to create a little data packet with delimiters, and we're going to use a comma as a delimiter. So I'm just going to say serial.print, and I'm going to print the xval. Okay, I'm going to print the xval, and then serial.print, and I will print a comma as the delimiter. Okay, and then I am going to serial.print. okay, and I'm going to print the Y val. All right, and then I am going to serial dot print, and then I'm going to print another comma. Okay, and now I'm going to do a serial dot print ln because now I want it to go to the new line, and then on that I will print z val. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to be looking at this on the serial monitor to see if it's all doing as we would expect. Now remember, and I'll give you a heads up, what your homework assignment is going to be, it's going to be to take this data, to pass it to Python, to pass it to that room simulation. You're going to create a little paddle, and you're going to move that paddle around based on the position of the joystick. And when you do that, remember that you're going to have to think about on the end of this, like sending a carriage return or a line ending, and then looking at it when you do the reads. You got to kind of remember how we were doing that. You got to think about how to get this. No, I think that's coming this way. I think here just the print line is going to work. It's when we're coming this way that we've got to be more mindful of the end of line character. Here, when we do the print ln, it's going to put the /r/n, and then when we read it in Python, then we just strip those off. So that should work just like this. But what we need to do now is run this and see if this thing actually works. So I will need you to hold your breath this time, and really, you guys, everyone has to hold their breath or this doesn't work. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Oh, pin mode, what did I do? Oh my, we have an error. Okay, pin mode input, let's see, somewhere we up here, and boom, we didn't put a colon there, semicolon. Okay, hold your breath. Someone didn't hold their breath, and that is what caused the problem. So whoever it was that didn't, this time I'm going to need you to hold your breath, okay? Boom. I don't know if it works, but at least it downloaded, it compiled and downloaded. So we need to open up the serial monitor and see what is happening. Okay, look at that. Boom, this looks pretty good. One thing I see I need to do, let me kill this. I do probably just need to put a little delay in. Okay, delay. I'll say DL. I'm going to be good and use my parameters. Come up here and then say int DL, and that's going to be equal to, let's just say 100 milliseconds, just so this thing isn't running too fast. That'll be 1/10 of a second between measurements. We'll come back. You do not need to hold your breath this time because I think I can add one line of code without a problem. This should just slow it down a little bit. Okay, now this is looking good. I will move this over where you can see it. So what are we reading? The X val is reading 512. Okay, the X val is reading 512, and the Y val is reading 508, and then the switch is in the up position, which is 1. Okay, now for this particular potentiometer or joystick, that if you hold this joystick with the pins to the left, it sort of lines things up between X in your program and X in the real world. And so you can see that X would be left and right. That's the first number. So if I go left, that 512, I lied. What did I do wrong? Let me look and see if I did. Okay, X is A0. Let me make sure that I hooked this up right. Yellow. I hooked it up backwards. Okay. I'm going to go back and fix it where it's like where I actually do what I said I was going to do. All right. And so that what I said I was going to do, I have done now, and that is X is connected to A0 and Y is connected to A1. So I had hooked those two up backwards. And so now we are back over here. Now we are back on our serial monitor, and now this should work. X is the first value. I'm going to move the joystick to the left. Boom! Look at that. It went to 0, and then it comes back. And remember that up and down is about the middle, and 508 is indeed about the middle between 0 and 1023. And then if I move it over to the right, boom, I go to 1023. So you see the X potentiometer is working. It's going 0 on the left to 1023 on the right. And then the second number is Y. If I pull it back, the Y goes to 1023. If I go forward, the Y goes to 0. And then also now let's look at the switch. The switch is at 1. I'm going to press the button. It goes 0. Shazam! Look at that. Okay, we have this joystick working. And so you can see, like, I should, if I go to the lower left, should be like 0, 0. Is it? Okay, yeah, I can kind of come down there and I can get to 0. That's 0, 1023. How am I thinking about that? Wrong. Okay. Up is 0. So up and to the left is 0, 0. Down and to the right is 1023, 1023. Up and to the right is 1023, 0. And down and to the left is 0, 1023. All right. Now, what I like about this joystick is, believe it or not, some joysticks don't give you that full range. And so if you go 1023 and Y, you're not able to get to 1023 and X. And I like it. This joystick allows us to completely completely span the parameter space with both potentiometers. And so again, we can go from 0, 0 to 1023, 1023, and we can get all the values in between. Okay, guys, we have that thing working. All right, now let's go back and let's just remember where we left off in lesson number 15. And where we left off in lesson number 15, I'll just show you on Visual Studio Code. We had this program, and if you have lost that program, you can come to the most excellent www.toptechboy.com, and you're not seeing that, are you? You can come to the most excellent www.toptechboy.com, and you need to search on something like using Arduino with Python lesson 15 and model of a bouncing marble in 3D room, and you can come over here with the happy little search bar and search on that, and then you'll come down here and you'll get the code that we use to create the parameterized room. And then that is the code that I have here on Visual Studio Code. And so now if we run this, we should get a window pop up, and there is our simulation. Okay, you've got a ball that is bouncing off of all 6 walls, and you can see the front wall we have is almost transparent, but it is there. And then that the ball comes and bounces off that transparent wall. Okay, now what is the homework? The homework is to take the data that you are getting off of the potentiometer and pass that data to Python inside of this program. And then what I want you to do is I want you to create in this room here in the front where we have that transparent wall. Instead of a transparent wall, what I want is I want a little paddle. Okay, so like right there, I want a little paddle. And then I want that paddle to go up and down and move around. Now, right now, don't change anything with the marble. Just leave it alone. The marble's just going to be bouncing around doing its own thing. But what you need is you need to get a paddle, and that's way too big of a paddle. But you need to get a paddle, something about like this, and then you need that paddle to go up and down, and you need to completely span the room where you can go from the top to the bottom, left, right, that you can put that paddle anywhere in that sort of space for the front face or the front wall, and you're moving this paddle around based on the position of the joystick. So you're going to sort of start bringing this animation to life as I am moving this around and the paddle goes where I want. Now, certainly, hopefully you see where this is going, but I don't want you to get overwhelmed. And so this first assignment is just to get the paddle moving, and then you can imagine what we are going to do after that. Okay, guys, I really hope that you guys are having as much fun with these lessons, taking the lessons as I am making them. I'm really having a lot of fun getting the Arduino talking to and listening to Python, and then I really love incorporating the visual Python where we can get these cool graphics, and you can kind of see where we're going here is we're going to end up with one of the old, kind of a 3D version of one of the old arcade games. Okay, guys, if you like this lesson, make sure that you give us a thumbs up. Leave a comment down below if you were successful. I am legend, or I folded up like a cheap Walmart lawn chair. Also, when you get your homework assignment done, do a screen capture and then post your solution to YouTube showing that you have this thing working with the joystick. Okay, then in the description of your video that you post, link back to this lesson so people will have context, and down in the comments below, put a link over to your homework solution. And I do look at all the homework solutions that you guys do. I find it really interesting. Some of you guys do some really, really amazing things. And then I encourage you, look at other people's homework assignments, look at their solutions, all right? And then start interacting with each other, developing a little bit of a community. But leaving a comment, leaving a thumbs up helps me with the old YouTube juice. That way YouTube will offer this video to more people. And that's important because the world needs more people doing engineering, building circuits, doing coding, and fewer people sitting around watching silly cat videos. Paul McWhorter with TopTechBoy.com, coming to you from the shores of the foggy River Nile. I will talk to you guys later.